I welcome everyone to our session on composting kitchen scraps for the school cafeteria. My name is Dinah Mack. I am the Education Program Manager with Massachusetts Farm to School, and we thank you all for coming. If you're not familiar with Massachusetts Farm to School, we work to strengthen local farms and fisheries and promote healthy communities by increasing local food procurement and education, food system education at school. You can get involved with Mass Farm to School in a lot of ways. We have professional learning opportunities like this one throughout the year. We offer a lot of networking events. We do policy work, and we send out emails. So if you're not on our mailing list, please, at the end, I'll make sure there's a link in the chat. And I have with us Amy Donovan, who I'm so excited to get to see present again. I got to see Amy present last year for a school-wide composting workshop that wasn't necessarily geared towards cafeterias. It was geared more towards a school-wide environment and community and working with students. Amy is the program director at Franklin County Solid Waste Management in Greenfield, Massachusetts. The Solid Waste District manages waste programs for 21 member towns, including 17 transfer stations and 25 public schools. 15 transfer stations in Franklin County offer free drop-off food waste programs for residents, and the majority of schools within the Solid Waste District divert food waste from the trash. Amy enjoys working with schools and has set up indoor worm compost bins in dozens of classrooms since 2007. And I'll also say that if you're interested in that, just send me an email. We can get in touch with Amy about leading a workshop on vermicomposting. And we also have recordings of Amy last year doing the school-wide composting, so I can get that presentation to you. So I'm going to stop sharing and give Amy the floor. And welcome to people who are just joining us.
Great. Thank you so much, Dinah.
Oh, and Amy, I forgot one thing. If anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat. And at 2:21, we might get a national warning on our telephones. Apparently, across the country, we're getting warned of nothing. It's a practice. So if you could silence your phones, or better yet, put them in airplane mode, or better yet, put them in a drawer, then we won't interrupt Amy. All right, Amy, thank you.
I put my phone on airplane mode, and then I was just like, I'll just turn it off. So it's on airplane mode and it's off. But it might be quite disruptive. So it's going to hit everybody's cell phone in the country, apparently. Okay, well, great. I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Dinah, and the Massachusetts Farm to School organization. I'm thrilled to be here. For anybody who's just joining us, we're putting in the chat what school district we're from. And I'd also love to know from the chat how many people attended the presentation that I did last January. So that's kind of like a new question, and maybe Dinah, you could tell me those results when some are available. I do have some of the same slides as I did in January, but I've added a whole bunch of kitchen slides more toward the second half of the presentation. So but I always want to tell people, like, why are we doing this? Why do we go through all this? And there's a lot of really good reasons. So I want to be sure to cover that. We've got people from all over the state here. I just want to go over a little bit about my organization to tell you who I am and some of our success stories here in Franklin County. So I'm going to be talking about taking food waste from school cafeterias and kitchens and putting them in a special container, like a dumpster. Mostly, I'm going to talk about on-site composting a little bit too, because I'd be remiss to leave that out. And then, so it goes into a special dumpster or toter, a special hauler picks that up, brings it to a compost farm or facility, where in Franklin County, that's turned into soil. We do have a lot of anaerobic digestion going on in the eastern part of the state, which I am not an expert on, so I'm not going to cover that. But there are schools that are sending their food waste for anaerobic digestion, which is a different technology that takes organic materials like cow manure and food waste, puts them into a special digester, a large container. Methane gas is released. That methane is captured and used for energy. But out here in farmy Western Mass, we are back to the land, folks. Just kidding. We are engaged more in composting, in turning food waste and organic material into soil. So just in case anybody does not know what composting is, I just want to cover this right off the bat. This is an actual school slide that I show to students across the region. And it just says, what is compost? During decomposition, worms, bugs, fungi, and bacteria eat dead leaves, trees, and animals. They turn them into compost or soil. And so when we compost in a large way in a school, a town, or a restaurant, we're collecting those materials. We're most often sending them to a facility that will turn them into soil or compost. And we're really using that natural cycle to dispose of things that we don't want. So it's really a genius way to deal with solid waste, organically based solid waste. So in this presentation, I'm going to use the word compost a lot. I'm using that word to mean food waste in this setting. Some people call this class of materials organics. That is more of a solid waste industry term. I find it is kind of confusing for the general public. They think it means it has to be organically grown food or things like that. So I tend to stay away from that word when I'm talking to the public. I use just in regards. Somebody's not muted. There we go. So I'm going to use the word food waste, food scraps, compost, and organics interchangeably in this presentation, but now you know what all those mean. And up in the top corner of this slide, I've got a bumper sticker that I created that just says compost, food, and paper, and no plastic. And that was funded by Mass DEP through a grant. So Franklin County Solid Waste District is a large waste district in the northwestern corner of the state. We border Vermont and a little bit of New Hampshire. And then it's in red. Can you see my mouse? Okay, so it's in red in this Massachusetts map that I stole from Wikipedia. And so our district goes all the way down almost to Northampton and Amherst. So it's the largest solid waste district in the state. A solid waste district is a voluntary measure by the participating towns. The state does not mandate or fund or require solid waste districts, but it's a great idea to regionalize, because then you can get people like myself and the executive director here, Jan Amin, who are providing professional waste management services of all types, not just for schools, to our member towns. So we're able to thinking across the whole 500 square mile region. And so we have 21 member towns, 17 transfer stations, which is the dump where people drop off recycling, trash, compost, and that kind of stuff. And then we have about 25 schools in our district, and then there are 8 others in the Greenfield School District, and another one too, that are not members of the solid waste district. But regardless, the headline here is, in 2018, before the pandemic struck, 33 of 35 public schools in this county were diverting food waste from the trash. Most of those were sending it to a compost farm. A couple were composting themselves on site. and about 8 were sending food waste to an animal farmer, such as a chicken farmer, a pig farmer. So keeping that good material out of the trash. And this article on the slide here is from the Greenfield Recorder in 2018. And it says 33 of 35 schools in the county actively composting. That's not quite right. But so 8 were sending the food waste to an animal farmer, but I don't think the newspaper could make that distinction, or chose not to. But the fact is that students from pre-K up through high school, this includes about 6 to 8 high schools that were at that time diverting food waste from the trash. Now, of course, the pandemic changed a lot of things, and some schools, a lot of schools in this region were doing remote learning. A lot of schools switched to a lot of packaged foods, and things kind of fell apart.
Hey, Kavya.
So
How you
over the
doing?
past little while, I have been working on restarting any schools that had not started up again. So we're not quite at 33 of 35 schools right now, but this is where we traditionally were after many years of hard work, and we're going to get back there. So I want to share this as encouragement that other schools can do it. I'm not bragging, I'm just trying to share. And so you can go away from this webinar if you're not composting yet and say, hey, to your administration or your colleagues, Franklin County, Mass was composting. Almost every school was composting at one time. So the 2 schools that weren't composting were 2 tiny elementary schools that are not part of our district, but for all I know, they were composting, but I could not verify that. So that was my 33 of 35. So, okay, so Mohawk Regional School resumed composting in March of 2022. So you can see here that we're starting to get we were starting to get some press and some programs going again. This is a great picture of their very simple sorting station. The student on the left here was a senior who was doing community service through National Honor Society, and he was standing there monitoring along with a couple other of his classmates. And I just want to show this one. This was probably the first school in the state to start a compost program back in the year 2000, 23 years ago. Pioneer Regional High School in Northfield, Massachusetts started a very comprehensive compost program. And this is one of their waste stations that are placed around the school, in addition to, of course, the cafeteria and the kitchen. Oops. Okay, so why compost? We have a beautiful picture here from a farm in Coleraine, Massachusetts, here in Franklin County. And you can see here that the soil is rich. Oops. I tried to turn that down. Oh, good. Okay. Rich, dark, crumbly soil, which grows beautiful plants in it. And as we deal with the invasive worms that are so prevalent throughout the Northeast, it seems, as people are finding out about these invasive worms, which are not the same kind of worms that we do indoor worm composting or outdoor worm composting with, these jumping worms are depleting the soil. And as people are learning about it, they're looking for the right things in their garden to look for these worms. And more people are reporting, yes, I have these invasive worms in my yard or wherever. So one way to combat them, I guess, is to feed them more nutrients and more compost. So they're going to be depleting our soils in the future years, and we're going to need to build back our soils. Also, erosion depletes our soils. Over farming depletes our soils. There's a lot attacking our beautiful soils, and so to grow healthy food and plants, composting is a great idea to add those nutrients and minerals back into the soil. It can replace chemical fertilizers, reduces watering, improves soil structure, and so we can grow more food, so we can go farm to school, to farm to school, to farm to school, and back again. I love this photo on the bottom. This is from the Hollamont Agriculture and U program at Hollamont Elementary here in Charlemont, Massachusetts, which is a wonderful public school that has an agricultural theme. And they're fabulous. Okay, so let's talk briefly about trash. So one of the main reasons to compost is to avoid making more trash. There's people here from all over the state, and in the eastern part of the state, waste incinerators are where most of the trash goes, from municipalities. But trash haulers who might be servicing your school can't always get into the incinerators. The municipalities have a contract with the waste incinerators that burn the trash to make energy, but the haulers might not be able to get in. The waste incinerator might be running at capacity, and it can only take those contracted towns. So a lot of trash is increasingly going out of state, and that is because we don't have much time left on the landfills in Massachusetts. There are only a few landfills left, and they're filling up every day, and they're scheduled to close all within about 4 years. So trash disposal is going to get more and more and more expensive as we go forward. The picture here is of Chicopee landfill on the top, which closed in 2019. It shows kind of the intricate and lengthy process that has to be gone through when a landfill is closing. It's not just a hole in the ground anymore, so there aren't any more landfills planned for Massachusetts. In Western Mass, we are now sending our trash very far away to states like South Carolina, Pennsylvania, and New York State. Most of that is going by rail, but some is going by truck. So again, it's getting more and more expensive, and transporting our trash to a faraway location is contributing to climate change. If we keep it local and send it to a local compost farm, we can mitigate climate change, we can save money, and we can deal with our trash right here in our own backyard, in a responsible way that will help feed our future families and help that soil that's getting depleted. So just really briefly, composting and recycling are activities that can slow climate change as opposed to landfilling it or even incinerating it. There are 3 major greenhouse gases, and the one that I'm going to be talking about is methane. So methane is released from landfills because when organically based materials such as food waste and paper are sent to a landfill and they decay there, methane is released. And that is because of the anaerobic, without oxygen, bacteria that exists in that environment. Pound for pound, methane is 28 times more effective at trapping heat. Did I lose the word heat there? I can't see it. Oh, it's there. Than carbon dioxide over a 100-year period. So if you think of the Earth's atmosphere as blankets, we used to just have like a nice cotton blanket there. And then humans started doing all these activities that added greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, and carbon started piling up like a bunch of cotton blankets, getting heavier and heavier. And then methane is like a down comforter, really trapping a lot of heat. So pound for pound, comparing the same amounts, it's much more effective as a climate changing gas. It retains the heat so much more. This data is all from the EPA. Landfills are the 3rd largest source of methane emissions in the US. You'll see methane pipes coming out of landfills, and they often have landfill gas capture systems, but those systems are not sometimes installed until the landfill is sectioned or the whole landfill is being closed and capped. A lot of methane has already escaped. So we want to reduce methane coming from landfills. And so you might ask, well, why doesn't composting release methane? And that's because oxygen is it's supposed to be part of the composting process, as opposed to a landfill where there's no oxygen. So if you have a home compost bin, you might know that you're supposed to stir it up every now and then, and it has little holes in it, and that's so that oxygen can get in there. In this picture of Martin's Farm here in Greenfield, which is where most of the compost from this region goes to, they're using a front loader tractor to stir up the compost, and they do this regularly to introduce air and get air into the middle parts of those piles, and they're very large piles. Martin's Farm in Greenfield accepts organics or compost from over 25 public and private schools, UMass, many other colleges, and 10 municipal organics programs at the transfer stations in Greenfield, Deerfield, that's old Deerfield if you don't know what I'm talking about, Northfield, Bernardston, Shelburne Falls, the Bridge of Flowers. That town now has a compost program for residents. Restaurants, markets, all the big Y supermarkets are composting. Public events such as the Franklin County Fair that I manage, food factories, everybody's doing it here in Franklin County and beyond. So when we think about composting, I like to think about it in different sizes, okay? And as you start small, go up in size of your system, you can compost more types of materials and more volumes of materials. Oh, somebody here is from Frontier. This is a picture of the Frontier garden. These are educational compost bins. They're not used, as far as I know, by the kitchen or the cafeteria at Frontier Regional School. They have a compost dumpster there that goes to Martin's Farm. So the smallest size of composting is worm composting. I'm not going to talk about that too much, but it's a very small system, usually in like a Rubbermaid tote. It only accepts a small amount of food, like a large yogurt container per week, and it only accepts a small range of foods like raw fruits and vegetables, coffee grounds, and eggshells. If you go up a step, medium size compost systems like backyard composting, on-site composting at a school, accepts a little bit more types of food waste and a little more volume, but not too much in these smaller bins. We can add bread and grains in as well as veggies and fruit. It's really important to add leaves, and you can do yard waste, but in both of these small scale programs or systems, you should not add meat, bones, dairy, animal products, or large amounts of protein. They won't compost well. They'll attract pests. So if you keep it kind of like vegetarian, it goes along swimmingly, and you can have some really, really high quality finished compost to use in your gardens at school or at home. I do want to point out a really awesome program at Pioneer Valley Regional School. Nikki Pullen is this amazing science teacher who has 2 6-foot worm bins. This is only one of them in this picture. But they're garden bins that she's made into worm compost bins, and I helped her get those started. And last year, I don't know how this went, but last year, the class was experimenting with taking food waste from the kitchen and composting it in this system, which is awesome. And maybe at the end, if we have some time left over, the person who's here from Pioneer can tell us, no pressure, if that's still happening. I don't know if it's still happening or how that went. But again, it would just be raw fruits and vegetables, really. Another example of medium-sized composting is your average backyard compost bin. Many towns across the state sell these at cost, and they actually get some perks from the Mass DEP for doing so. And it's all to encourage people to reduce trash and compost at home. At school, I love this picture. This was taken by the Greenfield Recorder of the Academy of Early Learning in Greenfield. And these preschoolers were so interested in this compost bin we were setting up. There's mostly leaves in there, but we did add some food waste. So this is a great educational opportunity, and you can get this very bin for free, it has a lid, from the Mass DEP program called the Green Team, which I'll tell you about at the end. This is a much bigger type of compost bin, but it's still only medium sized, because again, we don't compost meat, bones, dairy, oily foods, and peanut butter. This is a 3-bay compost system at a school. And there's me with brown hair many years ago, stirring that compost. The kids empty the pail after lunch into this bin. We cover with leaves and add leaves regularly, turn it often, but it is very labor intensive, I have to tell you. So this is awesome, but this is only for certain schools that can really manage this, and it's a commitment. Franklin County Technical School is another school that does on-site composting. This is a great opportunity for a school like this that has culinary arts and landscape horticulture programs. So those two shops in the tech school are working together to produce food waste, collect it, and then compost it. Again, no meat, bones, or dairy in these programs, and leaves are really, really, really important to add the carbon necessary for this type of composting. Okay, let's get to the meat of the matter. Haha. Large commercial composting, also called organics or on-farm composting, accepts all types of food, including meat, bones, cheese, oily foods, plus paper napkins, paper towels, food boats, paper lunch trays. And I have found in my years of work here that up to 93% of a school lunch, of the waste from a school lunch after they eat, is compostable at a facility like this. And it's just amazing. So you'll see in this photo that there's steam coming up from the piles. And this photo was taken in a cold month. You can also see there's some frost in the field there. And the reason I'm telling you this is because the piles are getting warm. And so that's why these large-scale compost programs can accept meat, bones, dairy. They can do a lot more than we can do in our own backyards or on site at a school. So I encourage schools to look into this, because you can really cut your waste significantly by doing this. I want to make sure I mention that on November 1st, 2022, the Mass Department of Environmental Protection enacted a further waste ban on food waste coming from commercial, institutional, schools, hotels, universities, restaurants. Any entity that makes more than half a ton of food waste a week has to compost it or feed it to animals or avoid it or recycle it by, feeding the homeless or whatever, rather than throw it in the trash. And you can get free assistance through a great statewide program called Recycling Works, and the website is at the bottom there, Recycling Works MA. And so on this website, there's a lot of tools, like a calculator. You can calculate, okay, if my school has this many students and they have a certain set amount of food waste created per student per week or day. And then you can find out if your school automatically falls under the waste ban or not. And so these folks at Recycling Works are the experts across the state, will help anybody figure out how to do this. So at a school, we can compost anything that's on that tray. And then I wanted to mention compostable plastic. There are special cups like this one that are clear. It says plants over plastic. And it's got the BPI certification, or the brand does. And then there's bags that will help collect food waste in the cafeteria or the kitchen, and you can put the whole bag into the compost dumpster or toter. And so these kind of lumpy, bumpy things like napkins, paper towels, even wooden sporks, bones, the cups, the bags. These kinds of things are chopped up at the compost farm and put out into these windrows. In anaerobic digestion, they can't really deal with the lumpy, bumpy stuff. So they have different methods of either getting that out and throwing it away, or different methods of handling that. So just know that if you're thinking about a system, if you mostly just have food waste, that would work perfect for you. But if your school has to use paper lunch trays and you want to compost these other things, it can be a little easier, and more of your materials can compost if you send it to a compost farm. The compostable bags, like shown in this picture of the yellow barrel, are placed in a compost dumpster or toter, which is picked up once or twice a week. I do not recommend any less frequently than that. Please do not have them pick up every other week. You will get maggots and smells and things. So, and there's ways, if you do get maggots, there are lots of ways to deal with that. You can, in this dumpster here, in your toter, put the bags of food waste and then put cardboard on top, because the farm accepts cardboard too. Check with your local hauler, see what they accept, if they accept cardboard. Or you can put smaller things that are easily acceptable, like shredded paper, paper towels, shavings from like the wood shop, if it's just wood, not if it's painted or anything, but shavings, shredded paper, and then like animal bedding, like you can buy a bale of compressed animal bedding that's actually wood shavings or sawdust, and it's cheap. It's like $7 for this bale. It will last a long time. Keep it in a barrel nearby with a cover, and just sprinkle that on top, or if you have a problem, sprinkle it on top. But if the dumpster is managed properly, that is usually not an issue. Don't put your dumpster right, or your toters right outside your school door, because that can increase problems like that. Keep it a little bit of a distance away. These are a couple of my actual school slides. When I start a compost program at a school, the very first thing I do when we're about to start, I meet with the staff and the kitchen staff, custodial staff, administration, teachers before that. But then when we're about to start, I give an educational presentation, and I teach kids some of these same things I'm talking to you about. Why are we doing this? Why is this important? And then I show them with pictures how to sort their lunch waste. So these next couple of slides are actual school presentation slides. And so in this one, it's a little counterintuitive, but we start on the right. We get rid of our trash off our tray first. And then there's a table there so that we can put our tray down. And then we go on down the line, dealing with liquids in the bucket and utensils in the other bucket, and then food and paper waste into the compost. Some schools have fancy, beautiful sorting tables with holes in them and stuff. I don't generally bother with that, because it's an added expense. It's kind of a barrier. Like, if we can't get that together, will we not compost? I say no. Use what you have. Take a regular barrel and mark it compost with a good sign, and you're good to go. In this particular school district, I started with all yellow barrels so that it would be the same throughout the school. And then this is another school presentation slides telling the kids how to dump their reusable tray, in this case, into the compost barrel. And I tell them to compost all their leftover food plus paper. Yes, kids, paper comes from trees, so just like leaves, it can turn into soil or compost. Okay, so through my work with students, I found that in many schools, a high percentage of the waste left over from lunch was compostable. And so the way I figured this out was, when I start composting at a school, I'll bring my little scale with me, and it's a scale that can weigh a barrel. And I weigh, or if I have a regular scale, like if I don't have that scale, I have the kids weigh themselves, a few volunteers, weigh yourself. Now weigh yourself holding the bag, or you can just weigh the whole barrel and then subtract the weight of the empty barrel and the wheels on the bottom, which is called a dolly. So I found that really high percentages of this waste is compostable. And so again, it's counterintuitive, but in this one, we're going right to left. Most of the time I go left to right, but we got to work with what we have. Okay, so through weighing the waste, I found that at one large high school that actually does a lot of cooking for the other schools in their district, they had about 155 pounds of food and paper waste in 1 week, and only 61 pounds of trash, which is the great majority, 72% of the waste from that kitchen. And this is a few years ago. Just a caveat here. I'm really reaching back into my pre-pandemic work here because boy, have things been busy ever since then. And so this is a picture of that same school kitchen. I apologize for the quality of that photo. It's the same 32-gallon barrel as we saw in the cafeteria. Here back in the cafeteria. There we go. It's in the kitchen, they have 2 to 3 compost barrels on wheeled dollies. That's very important. The wheeled dolly is not that expensive. A few years ago, it was like $32. So it's probably about 45 now or 50. And I do have some resources for grant funding at the very end. The barrel is lined with a compostable bag. Compostable plastics must be BPI certified. And there are tons of bags out there on the marketplace now. You can go to the website bpiworld.org to find out if your brand of bag that you want to buy is compostable. Here in Western Mass, a lot of schools order compostable materials from Mansfield Paper in West Springfield. Let me say that again. Mansfield Paper is a great place to get compostable tableware. The compostable specialist there who works with schools and environmental things is Suzanne Charette, but I'm sure anyone there could help you, or you could ask, who's that specialist on the compostable stuff? They'll say, oh, Suzanne, we'll put you right in touch with her. I want to caution that the compostable bags have come a long way, but it's still not going to be as strong as a plastic bag because it's made out of corn. So when you move these around, it's much better to roll the whole barrel around, roll it out to the dumpster or the toter that you're going to put it in for pickup, and then pick up the bag, tie it, please tie it, and put it into the container outside. In other words, don't walk through the school carrying this bag because it could break and that would be really messy. This is in Pioneer School District, in the Pioneer Regional School. This is a few years ago, so forgive me if this is not what's happening now. From left to right, we have compost, trash, and recycling barrels. And instead of buying the compostable bags that are a little more expensive, this school simply uses regular plastic bags. And you can see here that some bags are stored on the side. They look like they've been reused. So if you're going to put, bottles and cans in a plastic bag, you don't have to throw that away. You can just empty it out into the dumpster and then look at it. It looks pretty clean, and put it right back on that barrel. And I don't know if that meets the Board of Health specifications, but that's what I would do. And so they just use regular plastic bags. They empty them. And then if there's any concern about contamination or Board of Health, just throw the bag away. You would have been throwing it away if you had just thrown it in the trash, all of it in the trash anyway. So it's okay. This is at Turner's Falls High School, Molly. In 2013, I'm reaching way back into the archives here to bring you all some good content. This is a compost barrel at the hand washing sink. So the intention there is paper towels right near the sink. They go into there, as well as other food waste from around the kitchen. This is in the high school kitchen. In a small school kitchen, You can really do some cool things with this. When I introduced this at Sheffield School in Turner's Falls and some of the smaller schools in Greenfield, they said, oh, great. The kitchen staff was really enthusiastic about this. They said, I'm going to take our regular trash can and make that the compost barrel. And then, oh, here's a 5-gallon bucket. We're going to use this for trash. And so this particular picture is at a really small school that gets the food brought in from the larger school, actually the school you saw a picture before. And so they don't have much trash. So big caveat here, of course, this is not your average school. So this little picture on the right was all the trash that they had many, many days. I just happened to take a picture of it this one day. And that was inside of that white 5-gallon pail. So it was like less than a pound of trash a day. Leverett Elementary School also did this kind of system. It's a little bit of a bigger school where they do a lot of their own cooking, and they did not have much trash at all, like 1 to 3 pounds each day. There is a cover on this compost barrel, which is a good idea if you have any issues with insects or people who are squeamish, but it's just like the trash, right? You've just taken out the plastic stuff that can't be recycled or composted. But you're taking it out every day, so it's really no different than trash. So some schools use smaller containers around the kitchen to fill up food waste in different task areas or workstations, like food prep areas, the serving area where you're serving the kids the food, the dishwasher area, and the hand washing sink. So I've seen kitchens that have, 2 to 4 smaller containers around the kitchen. You could label them like with a bumper sticker, like the one that I showed at the beginning, and then that can go through the dishwasher. I don't know if this particular bucket I've got a picture of here can go through the dishwasher, but the kitchen manager told me she just washes it in the regular sink where she washes other large items from the kitchen. So you can use any container that works for you, a stainless steel bowl, a 5-gallon pail, your other containers from around the kitchen, and then make it simple for your staff, no matter where they're working. They've got a small container near them, and then they can just dump it into the larger barrel when it gets full or at the end of their day. And then you can put those smaller containers through the dishwasher, which is just brilliant, or wash them in the sink. I think the bowl idea is really great because you could put 2 or 3 of those bowls in through the dishwasher in one load. Okay, so that's my last slide about specific kitchen stuff. I just want to zip through a couple other things. And then I have some resources at the end for you. School kitchen recycling. I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. I took this photo at Turner's Falls High School stockroom a few years ago, and I thought it was a great opportunity for a photo. I took it for this purpose back then because everything pictured there is recyclable. Okay, so you finish the food, you compost any leftover food, and just rinse it out. It doesn't have to be washed with soap. You don't have to you just have to rinse it. Just rinse it, put the cap back on, throw it in the recycling. You're good to go. You did the right thing. This is some barrels inside of a school kitchen. And then this was an ingenious way to get the cardboard out. They had a shopping cart for some reason at the school, and they fill it up with cardboard and take it out to the recycling dumpster with a smaller recycling bin that was like underneath the dishwasher. This is a toter outside the school that is just filled with those, what we call number 10 tin cans, which are a great thing to recycle. Metal and aluminum are fabulous items to recycle and should really always be recycled because of the energy savings and material savings. They're highly desirable recyclables, and they always get recycled. And by the way, don't believe the press when they say that only 9% or 5% of plastic is recycled. That does not refer to what you put in a recycling bin. That refers to all the plastics manufactured. So, you know, my glasses case, my glasses, my phone case, any plastic is included in that. It's not even intended to cover things that we recycle. So it includes carpeting that might be in use for 20 years, furniture, appliances that might be in use for years. So our local recycling in Massachusetts really does get recycled, and we have very mature and successful recycling programs here in the state. Okay, resources. I want to make sure everybody knows about the Mass DEP Green Team. This is a free state program, and you can get free educational on-site compost bins, recycling toters on wheels. You could get for your kitchen to put your recycling in that look like this, but a little bit smaller. And recycling bins. And then teachers can get activities and lesson plans that align with state curriculum standards. They have films on their website, and there was a film that was made about the Northfield Elementary School and one of the Greenfield Elementary Schools that features yours truly talking a lot in the beginning. So fast forward to the middle, and you can see the students expertly sorting their lunch waste. It's pretty amazing. The green team signage is really great. They have different signs for compost, recycling, and trash, and share tables. Okay. I don't have share tables or bins covered in this presentation. There's not enough time. But the green team has some great stuff in their current newsletter. I don't know if it was September or October, but once you're a green team member, and anyone can join, even if you're working in the kitchen, you can join and then get their newsletter, which has tons of resources. Or you can email the green team and have them email that to you. Okay, so there's a great new development in the state of Massachusetts. There is a kind of grassroots group called Green Sword, and it stands for School Waste Reduction and Recycling. I don't know what it stands for, but it's called Green Sword, okay? And it's people like myself, people like you, working across the state on all of these topics. So there's waste reduction, there's a composting subgroup, there's an educational subgroup. The composting group is working on sourcing compostable lunch trays right now. So I just sent out a survey to my schools in my region, trying to get information about what kind of trays, paper trays, schools are using right now, because I want to see if we can get some collaborative purchasing going within our district or across the state to make sure that we've all got the type of compostable fiber trays that are truly compostable and do not contain PFAS, which is an additive that manufacturers put in to make paper products resistant to grease and moisture. So we want to get that forever chemical out of our compost stream and out of our stuff that kids eat on. So we're working on that behind the scenes. So the next meeting is tomorrow, Thursday, October 5 at 9:30 a.m. I've given you the Google group. That's like the website for this. But if anybody wants to join that meeting tomorrow morning, you can email me, and I've got my email at the end, and I'll put you in touch with the group leader, which is Gail, from the eastern part of the state. She's awesome. Another resource is Recycling Works in Massachusetts, which I already told you about. And I'm giving you their website there. And they also list organics haulers. So if you don't know who you want to compost, but you're like, I don't know who would pick it up, that's the place to start. Okay, so they list all the compost haulers. And if you don't know, like you're not sure, just email them or call them and they'll help you with that. The Carton Council, the Carton Recycling Council, has resources for schools in increasing recycling of milk cartons. And then, of course, Massachusetts Farm to School, who's hosting this webinar right now, is another wonderful state resource for greening up your schools and your offerings. I want to show these signs from the Springfield MRF Advisory Board. The Springfield MRF is the facility that that accepts recycling from most of the towns in Western Mass. So Springfield MRF is the website, and I actually manage that website, ironically. And on the What's Recyclable tab, you can find this sign, which is a great sign for your kitchen or your cafeteria, showing some common materials that can be recycled. And then also, when we recycle, we should know what not to recycle, right? And when we compost, same thing. So this sign is also on that website for you to download. You can print it in color, laminate it. It looks great. These are the things that are not recyclable or compostable that are commonly in use. And then this sign is not online anywhere. You'd have to email me to get this sign. And I'm happy to do that. And this was created with a Mass DEP grant that I got a few years ago. And I also have the bumper sticker that I make through makestickers.com. Signage is super important. Okay, this next slide is about a really unique funding source. So remember I said you could get barrels and things through some state funding. If your school works with your town, you can ask them if you can use some of their RDP funding, and that stands for Recycling's Dividend Program. And that funding has to be used on more materials to increase recycling, composting, and waste reduction in that town. So that can be used for signage, the bin liners, the compostable bags, the equipment, the barrels and things, post-consumer recycled content plastic trash barrels, your collection and processing costs, so your pickup, your hauling for your compost program. If your town has this funding, which many do, and is willing to share it with you, it can be used for all of these purposes. And then the last one, this is a big ask. It can be used for stipends to fund personnel that are coordinating new compost programs. So it's a pretty cool funding source that is kind of open-ended. Here's my contact information. I also want to mention one more thing. Well, no, I don't want to mention one more thing. I want to hear what people have to say. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I want to hear if people have questions, comments, ideas. What are you doing at your school kitchen? Is anything I said not clear? Did I forget to say anything?
Feel free to just unmute, or you can put comments in the chat if you don't want to do that.
I can start. So I'm Janelle. I work for the city of Salem. I'm the waste reduction coordinator. So all things solid waste, recycling, and reducing our solid waste. So diverting it to compost.
And don't forget hazardous waste.
That's actually with our health department. So
oh, okay,
no,
lucky you.
not under my purview. But I do all the electronic waste. I'm the liaison for our Salem Recycles Committee. So we do repair cafes, book swaps, textile drives, etc. So I've been in this role for a year now and immediately started trying to get Salem Public Schools on board with composting. So I met with school committee and superintendent and was given approval. But unfortunately, we're doing it one school at a time. I'm referring to our initial approach. So phase one is just starting in the cafeteria, back of house with staff. Phase two is then introducing it within the cafeteria to students. So we just started in September at our smallest elementary school. So it's about 250 students. We have 6 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and 1 high school. And I'm thinking that maybe when students come back from winter break, that we'll be able to introduce phase two to to that first school. But right now it's the funding that, so like the city engineering department oversees all of the solid waste and recycling. But composting was never part of like the budget or anything. So that's a separate line item. But our solid waste contract is up June 2025. So I'm hoping we can somehow incorporate organics into it, because our school certainly doesn't have or our school committee doesn't have the budget to take that on. So, but that's where things stand, one school at a time, one phase at a time.
Janelle, I gotta tell you, I went to Salem State College
Oh,
and I'm from Western Mass, so that's a thing.
great.
And my aunt Marcia was on the Salem Recycles, Marcia Donovan, Salem Recycles Committee forever. She passed away a couple
Awesome.
years ago, but
Oh,
we miss her so much. She was one of the original members. So she would love to see, and I love to see this happening, because when I went to Salem State in the early 90s, I started the first recycling program there, of course, and I would just put bins around and bring the bins to the drop off. And so we've come a long way. I mean, it's
so
amazing, right?
Salem State also brought me to Salem. And 21 years ago, there was no recycling. So whatever you
Yes.
started ended. So
No,
I actually,
my program was too casual. It was not institutionalized.
well,
So
I actually, it took me 5 years to institutionalize recycling, but so it's back up and running.
thank you. We've got to talk about this offline, but
I love it.
I wanted to mention, because you mentioned the contract. Some of my schools, already had a solid waste contract with a waste hauler, of course, for recycling and trash. And so I found that the haulers were so gracious and said, "Oh, well, we don't offer organics hauling, so we will allow you to change your contract." And so we didn't have to wait for the contract to be up. So it is definitely worth asking your hauler. If you start your program, you get it going, and then you're like, "Whoa, we're really reducing waste here." Then approach your hauler and say, "We're doing this." Give them the results. You don't have to hide anything from
Yeah,
them.
no,
You're
in our
saving them
contract, it
money.
doesn't change. We can add and remove frequency of dumpsters without changing our
Oh,
like
good.
monthly costs. So,
Oh,
but
well, at least you can reduce the
it will certainly
frequency, but
reduce our tonnage, so our tip
yes.
fees will be lower. So
Yeah.
yes, that's where we'll see the savings.
So they might let you do it like without changing any money. And then when your contract is up, maybe they'll even give you a break now. Who knows? But
No.
yeah. But and then you can change. The goal of all of this is to reduce the frequency of pickups for your dumpster, or reduce the dumpster size, and then use that savings to pay for the compost hauling. And your school will have a lot less trash. There was one school that started doing this in my district that was throwing everything away in like 9 trash cans all over the cafeteria. And I said, no, let's hide those trash cans in a back room or something. We're going to have one trash can and make everybody go over to this one sorting station. And then that day, when I gave the presentation, and then we start at lunch that day, it's always how I do it, so it's fresh in their mind. We also switched to reusable trays. Okay. So they went from throwing everything away to reusable trays, recycling, and composting. It was a little slow at first, but I had student volunteers helping. And right away, we reduced the school's trash by 45%. So they went from having, several pickups per month, like 1 or 2 a week of the trash dumpster, to, I don't know, many less. I don't know. I don't have the math on top of my head, but the school's trash was reduced by 45%, which was amazing. So kudos to you, Janelle, for all your work. And one school at a time is a good way to do it.
Thanks, Janelle. Amy, there's a question in the chat from East New York Farms Compost Program that says, what paper decay is considered bad if not actual paper?
Okay, is that about, do you think that's about the PFAS that I was talking about?
And East New York Farms, you're welcome to unmute or just clarify that in the chat.
Okay, see this compostable
you
cup
Yes.
that I'm using? The only reason I'm using this is because my tea in my reusable cup was too hot to drink and I had to have it because I have a cold. But so compostable things like that cup that are BPI approved do not have PFAS in them, and PFAS is a forever chemical. It's an abbreviation, PFAS. And so people are trying to get this out of products and keep this out of compost. I think that's what this person is asking about.
I just wanted to clarify. So you were talking about paper decay mixing with food scraps,
Yes.
and my question that first came up, like brown bags, like that is like a brown, it's considered a brown. But also like when we think about, you talked about paper, for instance, like paper that you use to recycle,
Yeah.
that one has oxygen. Like what would be an example of paper decay in particular that has PFAS?
Okay, so paper plates, like traditional paper plates, like people buy in the grocery store, that are just, the usual brands, are coated with the PFAS. So that might decay. And even Chinette, for years we depended on the brand Chinette, that it was compostable, and it is compostable. Okay, it will break down this certain, you know what I'm talking about? It's like that kind of thick paper plate that you can rip easily. Those have PFAS in them. But if they're certified by BPI, the Biodegradable Products Institute, they don't have PFAS. So both of those can compost to varying degrees, maybe not the Dixie or the colorful paper plate that says happy birthday or whatever, but they can, the Chinette brand, I'm so sorry to burst people's bubble, but Chinette brand composts beautifully, but it does contain PFAS, which is this additive that keeps it from absorbing the grease and moisture in the food. So they'll both compost. It's just that one will have this harmful additive and the other won't. So does that answer your question? Am I getting this right? And by the way, things like pieces of paper, can compost at the compost farm, and cardboard and stuff like that, pizza boxes, because they shred everything up into little pieces, and then it biodegrades and composts along with the food waste and leaves and other things in there. So does that answer your question?
Yes, it was beautifully answered. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, Amy, the next question in the chat is, do you have suggestions for decision makers if they're already dealing with rodents and are worried about composting increasing the rodent problem? And I've heard this question many times as well.
Yeah. Janelle is saying she likes to compare the dumpsters with the toters or bins with lids. Yes, a toter that's closed. So do people know what I mean by a toter? It's got wheels. People use it, towns use it for recycling, and it has a lid that flaps on. Those are, there's a local hauler that uses the toters, that uses bicycle inner tubes to securely attach or flatten or make that lid so that nobody, not even a rodent, can lift it up and get inside. So yes, I agree with Janelle that the compost dumpsters are there's a lot of places where rodents could get in. Lucky for you all, there aren't that many haulers that are using those dumpsters. In my region, they're king, but in most regions, toters are king. So if you can get a locking toter, or a toter that can be closed with, I'm telling you, this bicycle inner tube thing is the perfect thing to use. It's reused also. And then you can securely keep that compost toter when it's outside, keep it under wraps. I bet you the school that you're thinking of has a trash dumpster that rodents can get in and out of. So, hey, by composting with a toter and keeping it closed, you might do better with the rodents than you are just with the trash dumpster, because trash dumpsters are porous and they can get in through the lids on the top or through a hole in the bottom if it's rusty. Some dumpsters even have a little plug hole to let rainwater out. And it's open. I look at it, I go around back, I'm like, well, this is open. Well, you can get a plug and plug it, but sometimes they just don't have that. So maybe your rodents are being caused by your trash. And if you start composting with toters, you might be in a much better situation. Also, you know, be vigilant about, you know, taking the trash out, taking the compost out every night, tying up the bags and securing it in that outdoor container.
Great, thank you. We're a little bit over time. Does anyone have any last questions for Amy while we have Amy here? We are going to follow up with everyone on the call, and everyone who registered. We'll be sending the video and the slide deck from Amy. And at the end of that slide deck, there is an email for Amy. So if you hang up and you're thinking, I wanted to ask Amy a question, you can always email.
I'm putting it in the chat too.
All right, great. So
It's
thanks
Amy
everyone
at
so much.
Franklin.
And please feel free to share when you do get the recording and the slide deck. Please feel free to share it with your colleagues, people who didn't register. Let them know about Mass Farm to School and our resources, and let them know about this great resource from this workshop as well. So we can get everyone working to compost more and support climate in that way. Amy, you struck me when you said up to 93% of school lunch is compostable.
Yeah.
Staggering percentage. So,
Yeah.
and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dinah. I really appreciate this opportunity, and everyone who tuned in. I really appreciate you taking your time out of your day.